Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And today I almost forgot how our intro worked. That was fun. We're joined, though, by the fantastic author. James Batchelor is here, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. Yeah, that's usually when we hold for applause. And then I realize we're not a live podcast.
I might have a button for that. Applause.
Oh. There it is. Perfect. All right. So you're the author of The Best Nonviolent Video Games. And we read your book. And we're here to talk about it today. And I'm super excited to talk about it with you. So that's kind of where we're at.
There are so many nonviolent video games. I mean, it's not that I didn't know they existed, obviously, but it's like, dang, you can fill a whole book with these. Yeah. That's great. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about the book and like what your
and I've done so.
Well, I think maybe there's some lag here.
There's a little bit of lag on my end, but I am on the wrong side of the world. So
that is true. Well, we can just work with it. We'll figure it out. So do you want to hit the first question, Tyler?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to ask you to just tell us a bit about the book and what prompted it. Like, why?
So the book came out of a side project I do called Nonviolent Game of the Day, which originally started as a Tumblr blog with a Twitter to kind of promote it, but then everyone didn't realize it was a Tumblr blog, so it's just a Twitter account now. And I think I've started doing it on Blue Sky as well. But yeah, the idea was I just post a short thing of like, here's a nonviolent game every day. The reason I do it is this kind of came from. I always worry about sounding too casual with this because it's seemingly quite a morbid subject. It actually was inspired by the reaction to the Sandy Hook shooting. So in the aftermath of the Sandy Hook shooting, obviously there was the usual, the video game, the killer was an impact, despite the fact that years of academic studies have never, ever proven that there is a link between violent video game content and violent actions of those who play them. But inevitably, the fact that he played violent video games came up. A lot of people, brought up the usual, is violence in video games too much kind of debate. And one group of a defunct website now called Gamer Fit Nation, their response was they were going to hold a ceasefire in respect for what had happened. So they were like, right, we're going to prove that all gamers care about this. Just because we play violent video games doesn't mean we don't have any kind of respect for or appreciation for the absolute tragedy that's happened. For one day, we are not going to play any violent video games as a mark of respect. And I thought that was really interesting because just because they're not going to play violent video games doesn't mean they're not going to play video games. And I toyed with doing could you do a list of here's all the games you could play on the day of the ceasefire if you're taking part. But as you guys say, there's so many non-violent games. They've been around forever. We might well get into this conversation during the podcast. But they've been there from the beginning, and they've been perhaps some of the most influential titles on the entire industry. That just having a list for one day didn't seem like a lot. And I thought actually you could probably do one every single day, and that's where non-violent game of the day came from. So I have to confess, I have not been able to do it every single day. You'd be surprised how being a full-time journalist and a part-time author and a dad and all the other things I do means that finding 15, 20 minutes to quickly research one and write a tweet surprisingly doesn't happen every day. So shamefully, I've not done one. But I've got plenty in the works. I've done 1,200 or so on the Twitter account. And in my spreadsheet, I've got something like 3,700 that I haven't covered yet. And that's just from games that I've come across or that have been announced in the last few years. I haven't even gone through the entire history of the video games industry. There are so damn many. And that's without me doing, every single match 3 game or every single idle game, etc. Sometimes there's I've covered a game, but there are so many different versions of this game that one game kind of counts for 20 plus or more, even more. Anyway, so I do this account, and I've always kind of toyed with scrolling through a Twitter account is not the best way of finding video games. It's kind of why I originally started as a Tumblr, and I tried hashtagging, and I thought I don't have the resources to create a massive database that people can search through. I loved the idea of, well, maybe I could write it as a book. I'm an author in my spare time. maybe I could write this as a book. A journalist I know, a chap called Chris Scullion, he's been writing books for a publisher called White Owl Books. He's done things like the NES Encyclopedia, the SNES Encyclopedia, like basically here's a guide to all the games that came out on these platforms. And I looked at these and they're great books. And I'm like, maybe that's a format I could do. Like, here's X amount of non-violent games. So he was actually tweeting saying, oh, my publisher's looking for more video game themed books. Let me know if you've got any ideas. I messaged him, say, look, do you think they'd be up for doing non-violent games? I've been doing this Twitter account. Do you think they'd be interested? And he's like, yeah, absolutely would. I'll drop them a line. They were very interested. They talked to me a little bit. We sent me out a contract, and that's how the book came about. I wrote the best non-violent video games.
I love it. So here's the one of the things that I saw, because in the beginning of your book, you have your guidelines for what makes a non-violent video game. How did you go about that process? It took a lot of thought to get into it and figure it out, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, those are kind of the rules that I run on the Twitter account. So it's kind of it's kind of a mindset I've been in for the best part of 10 years now. But yeah, it's difficult. Violence is very subjective. And I don't think it just comes down to graphic violence. I was trying to prove that video games are more interesting than just relying on combat as a core gameplay mechanic. So the three rules I've got are: it cannot be a game where you are compelled, required, or encouraged to harm any living thing. So obviously that rules out like shooters and beat 'em ups and hack and slashes, but I also rule out any kind of family-friendly violence. I'm doing air quotes there in very blurry. My blur filter is stopping my air quotes. Sorry. People on the video, people on the audio version, just know that I've just done very, very blurred finger movements. Family-friendly violent titles like Mario. How many Goombas has Mario murdered by stamping in their head? Like that, I didn't want to be, hey, here's a game that's not particularly violent, and someone reply and go, what about all the Goombas he killed? Like, there are nitpickers in this world. And even with the criteria I've set out, which I'll get into in a second, like, I've had people go, but what about? We live in a world of but what about at this point. So yeah, I left out non-violent, like family-friendly violent games. So any game that compels you, requires you, or encourages you to harm any living thing, not counting. Any game that compels you, requires you, or encourages you to take a violent action, also not counted. Because I thought, well, people will be like, well, if you're shooting robots, they're not living things, that's okay. That's not violent. So yeah, but the act of shooting a gun is a violent act. And then by extension, strategy games like Civilization. Yeah, okay, you're not the one directly taking violence, but if you tell a soldier to go and kill that other soldier, the violence is a direct consequence of your actions. So that counts as violent. So none of those games in there. And then the last one was graphic. There's no games where there's graphic depiction of violence. So, even if it's like a horror game with no combat in it, if there's like bodies and severed heads and stuff, that's still a graphic depiction of violence, of the aftermath of violence. So that counts as a violent game. So using those three rules, I've managed to find the vast majority of games. You still get some people complaining, like, so I think I featured Puzzle Quest years ago, and people are like, but this is it's a battle, it's combat. It's like, no, the actual gameplay is matching 3 gems. It's a proxy. It's a proxy for combat, but there's no violence happening here. You're matching gems. Is chess a violent game? No, it's a proxy for combat. So it's hit and miss, and there are still some people who disagree with my definition of violence and claim that some of the books in the game do technically count as violent, which it's so subjective. But I'm fairly confident in my rule and in my rules, and I think it works.
I think so too. That's something that when I was reading your book, I was very interested to see how you would handle that, and I thought it was really good because there's certain aspects of it that are just unavoidable, but. Like in the sense, like your book, because for example, like you mentioned racing games, like it's violent when a car hits another car. That's violent, but the act of racing is not.
Exactly, and you're not meant to crash into people. Like that's not the object of the game. I've had people go, FIFA's violent when you tackle people. It's like, well, not if you do it right. If if you're tackling properly, then no, you're not causing. It's not violent. Like it's such a weird one. I do honestly, even now, like, I mean, it's 10 plus years since I started that account, and it's, the book's been out a good few months. I still have people question, well, what about this? And it's difficult, but like, it's the whole point is to demonstrate how varied video games can become when the goal of the game is not kill all the things. And I'll clarify now, this is not to decry violence. I enjoy violence in video games. I do. We all do. Like, I maybe I don't like the particularly ultra-violent ones, but I know plenty of people who do. This is not to say video games are too violent and we need to be playing all these games instead. It's to say, like, there are alternatives out there. If you do want something different, if you do want a change of pace, it's out there. And it's also, like, again, kind of going back to my previous rule of, like, no graphic depiction of violence. That's not to say there's no concept of death. Like, if there's a murder mystery game, providing you don't see the murder or see the body, investigating a murder is not a violent gameplay loop. It's not a violent gameplay concept. It's a really interesting one. So video games are such a varied medium. There's so much breadth to the type of things you can do. Like, I think I rattle off in my intro in the book about, like, video games you can try lots of different jobs. You can dance, you can sing, you can create, you can fall in love, you can solve mysteries, you can solve puzzles. Like, there's so many different things you can do other than killing things. I just kind of wanted to explore that.
Yeah. Tyler,
really
I think
cool.
Yeah, Tyler, I think you got the next question, because you have a question, Tyler, that I'm very excited about. It's the next one on our list.
Yeah, so we talked about all this, the nonviolent things, to go over the rules of nonviolence, and then the foreword is by John Romero, who is one of the kings of violent video games. Tell me about the juxtaposition there, and then and how was that, like, just working with him to get that foreword done? I just think that's cool.
Honestly, the juxtaposition is, I just found that funny. I just found it really funny, the idea of having John Romero, the guy who created, like, Quake and Doom and Wolfenstein, as the foreword of a non-violent games book. I'm lucky enough that in my full-time job, I'm a journalist. I am currently editor-in-chief of GamesIndustry.biz, which is a B2B publication for the video games industry. I've been a journalist for about 17 years. I've had the good fortune of interviewing John a good few times, and not that we're best friends and all that, but I think we got on fairly well. So when I had this project, I just thought, like, wouldn't it be funny if we have John Romero, like this famed designer of violent video games, but crucially, like, famed designer of non-violent games as well. Like, he and his wife Brenda Romero, they worked on I think it was Ravenwood Fair, was like a Facebook game about making a fairground. I think that was largely, if not entirely non-violent, that was largely non-violent. And regardless of, like, the fact that most of his games tend to be violent, like, he's just a very clever game designer. He's just a brilliant game designer, one of the best the industry's ever produced. So I thought, it'd be great to just have him. And honestly, I fired off the email not expecting a reply. I mean, he's a busy man. Funnily enough, like, while I was writing my book, he was writing his own one. He's actually produced his autobiography. I've read, like, the first half of it. I'm still kind of chipping away at it, but I recommend it. It's a really good read from what I've read, like, about his whole life and how he got into games design and how he made Doom and so forth. So I just fired off the email. I was like, "Hi, John. I know you're a busy man, but I'm writing this book on non-violent video games. Would you be interested in writing the foreword? I'd really appreciate just a few paragraphs." And he sent it back within, like, a couple of weeks. He was like, didn't even, like, ask, like, what he needed. He was like, "Yeah, here you go." So yeah, no, I was so grateful for him for giving me his time for that. I really did appreciate it, and honestly, I just enjoy the juxtaposition.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, that was when Tyler pointed that out. I was like, wait, what? It's such a weird thing, but I love it. Okay, so the next, like, couple things we have in here, Tyler and I have kind of broken it out by, like, games and genres, because there are some things we want to highlight, just games that we're like, oh yeah, or I never heard about this before. And the first thing we talk about on our list here is just your Animal Crossing. Like, that's something I feel like, especially now in 2023, that's like the pivotal like non-violent game, especially after COVID and all of us being locked in and obsessed with it. So was that like a must-have on the list for you?
Oh yeah, that absolutely had to get in. That absolutely had to get in because I mean, I was writing this. Blimey, when did I start writing this? I think I was writing this 2021, 2021 into 2022. So yeah, obviously the big New Horizons moment has happened. Obviously, Animal Crossing has been going for years. Like, and funnily enough, like the subject of video game violence came up on like in games industry Twitter like a few days back, and people were like, yeah, video game violence is not, like non-violent video games are not new. Animal Crossing has been going since like I was at 2001 for the West, but like earlier than that because it was originally an N64 game in Japan. Like, I know it's not new, but like that was perhaps the biggest and most successful example we've had in years. That game sold, I think it was something stupid like 20 million within the first 3 months. More than any of the other Animal Crossings have sold combined. And yeah, I mean, like, that game perfectly demonstrated what video games can offer people. Like, here's a space where you can hang out, chill out, customize your house, do what you want to do. If you want to get really into kind of interior design, go for it. If you just want to go bug hunting and populate the museum, go for it. If you just want to make friends, go for it. If you want to do a mix of it, all go for it. Like, and using that place as a social space during lockdown, like it's a perfect example of how non-violent video games can satisfy people in different ways and kind of bring people together. So yeah, there was absolutely no way I couldn't include that. And it's a good example actually. Like, so I think in the book I say like there's more than 300 games in here. Like, but I could have easily done like Animal Crossing Wild World, Animal Crossing New Leaf, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Like, I wasn't going to do them all individually. I've done Animal Crossing as a series, but New Horizons is absolutely the poster child for it. Yeah.
That's awesome. The other stuff that I love, that because my mom is big into this kind of stuff, is the puzzle games. This just like basically every puzzle game is kind of non-violent, right? Unless there's something weird going on there. But those are some of the biggest games, right? Like Tetris and Columns, and then even those like there were a lot of mobile. I mean, there's still mobile games, but there are a lot of mobile games in the early days of mobile games, like Cut the Rope or Where's My Water, that are like sort of puzzly but non-violent, and yeah, and Portal too, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. So cool. I love the Portal games. They are brilliant. And like, okay, more on Portal in a second. I'll talk about puzzle games first. Like, yeah, puzzle games like are superb because, again, that's the core example of that's the prime example of what do you do as a gameplay loop. Because ultimately, the gameplay loop is what keeps people engaged and what keeps people wanting to play, to see what they can do next. And rather than, can I kill this next thing that's harder to kill than the previous thing, can I solve this puzzle? Can I put together the clues? Can I work out how the mechanics are working? So that there are so many different, like, puzzle games go beyond just Tetris and then a bunch of Tetris likes. You've got things like The Witness, which is, it's the line drawing thing, but it's also an exploration game. You've got things like Heaven's Vault. Heaven's Vault is an amazing puzzle game. Technically, like, it's a narrative adventure game, but technically it's all about the puzzles. And the puzzles are, here's an ancient hieroglyphic statement. Can you translate? Can you work out what that means? And the more you translate, the more you recognize the symbols, the more you can translate further going on. And you start to understand the nature of this very universe, like the universe of Heaven's Vault. Where's My Water is a great one. Like, can you just clear a path for the water to get to the crocodile who desperately wants a shower? There's so many clever ideas when you step away from, right, we're going to keep the player engaged by getting them to kill things and engaging them in combat and making it really fun to, like, move around and kill things and making it all action. As soon as you get to, right, how are we going to engage the player's brain? How are we going to get them thinking? How are we going to get them thinking differently, a la Portal? Some of the games that people come up with are incredible, absolutely amazing. Like, the puzzle designers just amaze me. Portal, I think, is a prime example, also another type of non-violent game, which is like taking seemingly a violent mechanic, like as in what you actually do, and giving it a non-violent context. So Portal is essentially a shooter. You are just shooting portals rather than bullets. Power Wash is a shooter. Power Wash Simulator is a shooter, but you're shooting water instead of bullets. As soon as you change, you don't have to change the verb. The verb, you're still shooting, but as soon as you change the context and the nature of what you are doing, it becomes a completely different game. It becomes a non-violent game in some cases, and obviously the Portal games are just hilarious. So anything. I have a lot of time for the Portal games. I started playing Portal 2 while researching this book. Started replaying Portal 2 while researching this book, and I forgot. It's still phenomenal. I forgot how good that game is.
Yeah, I gotta pick it up again. It's been a while since I've played Portal 2.
You definitely do.
It's so fun. It's such a good game. And I never played the co-op thing either. I gotta get my wife roped into it.
Honestly, so I remember we're going on a tangent here, but I don't care. Like it's
That's okay.
I remember getting Portal round about the day of release, and I actually had a friend coming over, and it's got co-op. It's like, oh, let's give the co-op go a go. I hadn't played the single player campaign at all. Oh, let's give the co-op go a go. We sat down about 8 o'clock in the evening. About 3 a.m. we finished. We played through the whole co-op game in one sitting because you just wanted to. It's like, oh, actually, that was really clever. Oh, what about that? There was one moment where I don't want to give it away because if anyone hasn't played it, like it's an amazing puzzle. But we had this room.
We should play it, Mike.
Okay,
we should play it together.
You should do it. There was one room where we could not work. We must do it. This is probably about like 1:30, 2 a.m. We just could not work out how to get through it. And then there was just a moment where we looked at the layout of the room and was like, oh, hang on. If we did that and we put that, no, they wouldn't do that, would they? And we tried it and then it worked. And it's like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like, it was the most satisfying puzzle solution in my entire gaming career. It was just amazing. Yeah, you two absolutely need to get on this one.
We should do it, Tyler. We should play it. We should try to record ourselves playing it too. We should do that.
Let's hear the reactions.
Search of more content. Well, I kind of want to talk. We have a couple different narrative games spread throughout the list, but I like that narrative-based games seem to be a really good place for this like non-violent theme. And I'm going to move this one up here, Tyler, because it's the one I love the most, and it's Firewatch. I just love Firewatch so much. And it's a game that I got my wife into video games too. Like she played through it and she loves like national park stuff, and it was great for her. So do you want to just talk about the narrative games that you like researched and went through? Because we have a couple different ones here. We have Assemble with Care, Lake, and Jalopy is also one that I thought was a really cool premise for.
Yeah. And again, this comes back to like, as soon as you step away from this is all going to be about combat and battles and how do we frame these battles, as soon as you don't have to do that, video games can tell some really interesting stories. Video games can tell the most interesting stories of any entertainment narrative, and I loved some of the narrative games in this book. To rattle off some favorites, Florence. If you haven't played Florence, I urge you to do so. It's about 40 minutes long. It's a mobile game, but it's about 40 minutes long. But it is the entire story of a relationship, like from meeting that person to first dates to what happens as the relationship progresses. It is all told without a word of dialogue, and it's told with almost WarioWare style mini games that are so short and fleeting but they're perfect. Whereas the WarioWare mini games are silly, these are brilliant. Like these are these go on about some of them are like just brushing her teeth, and it's to get you used to like just interacting with the touchscreen in different ways. But then some of them are honestly full blown metaphors. Like there's one I won't give away, but there's one later on where actually you have to do the opposite of what you think the minigame wants you to do in order to progress through the story, and you realize what it's trying to tell you, and that's amazing. And the best one is when the Florence and the guy she's with go on their first date. The puzzle is you're putting together speech bubbles out of puzzle pieces to simulate their conversation. And to begin with, there's loads of different puzzle pieces, and it takes ages to put together a speech bubble. But as they grow more comfortable and the conversation starts to flow more naturally, the pieces get larger. So soon you've only got 2 or 3 pieces of a speech bubble, and then soon you're just putting speech bubbles in whole speech bubbles. And it's a metaphor for how smoothly conversation flows when you're more comfortable with someone. And you can't get that across in a book or a film or a TV. It's only a video game can do that. Another great one, Her Story by Sam Barlow. Phenomenal game. For those who aren't familiar with the concept, you are searching through police footage of interviews with one suspect, same woman every time, and you are trying to work out what's happened. I think there's a sense that someone's died, but you don't know anything. It's not kind of like, this is the suspect in a murder. Like, there's nothing. You're just presented with these interviews. And what you have to do is you have to find more video clips by searching for words that she says. So if she says something like, "Oh, I went to this address," you search that address, or, not a bad example because it's one word searches. If she mentions a name, she mentions the name of another person she knows, you search that name and it comes up with 5 videos with that person. And you have to think about different words you can use, because you're only allowed to use one word and you only get 5 videos each search, to try and piece together the story of what has happened to this woman or what's happened around this woman. And there's quite a few twists, but there's a particularly big one. And whereas with like books, film, TV, the plot twist will come in the same way, delivered at the same moment, in the same style for every single person who views it. This is not so much a revelation as it is a realization. And you twig, oh, now I know what and you think, oh, hang on, I wonder if she's talking about this. And you search something, it's like, no, she's absolutely talking about this. And you twig and you realize only video games can do that. You solve the story, you put together the story. And it's not like like BioShock finding different audio logs, and then hoping once you found all of them you understand. It's you putting it together in your imagination, in your brain, understanding what's happening. Narratives in video games can be absolutely phenomenal and beyond anything any other medium can do. As you can tell, I'm quite passionate about this, so I will stop talking for a moment.
No, I love it. I was like, you have me all in now. I want to try these games.
That's one of the things that like I love to think about that in the same way of like whenever we get like a really, really good game that comes out where everybody loves the story and they say, wow, games can have such great stories. I think of things like The Last of Us, games like that. I try to find myself thinking, well, what about this story needs to be told in a video game, right? And for a lot of games like that, it doesn't have to be. I think Last of Us kind of proves that, right? The show on HBO is fantastic, and it doesn't have any gaming elements into it. And so when you take away that combat stuff of what a lot of games are trying to get you to, you need to have something else that's compelling. And these stories that like can only be told in video games, like that I love thinking about that. Like, why does this need to be a video game? And like you said, some games, they have to be. You can't do it unless it is, right?
Yeah,
that's so.
You couldn't make a Her Story movie. You couldn't make a Florence movie. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah, it's just not the same. Part of it is interacting and putting it together yourself.
I think that's why I love the book too, is because it's just showing you all these different aspects of video games that like got people like me who like mostly before I really started this podcast and kind of started diversifying what I played, I was like shooters, like Western RPGs, like that's all I really played. And like that's what gets me excited about video games now, is like books like this that show you there's a whole wide world out there and you gotta go find it, really. So
and that's something I wanted to encourage. Like I think I say like this is not just for people who already play these games and kind of want to validate their choices of games. Like this is for people who have ideally someone who reads this book is not aware of almost any of the games in the book and wants to try them. Like I say like hopefully this leads to people finding new favorites, because a lot of these games I'm not the person who discovered it. A lot of the games I've included in the book, when I have discovered them for myself, it's when I've stepped out of my comfort zone. I'm the same with you. I'm not a massive fan of shooters, but I love like stealth games, which inevitably end up killing people in the dark, and open world RPG games, which inevitably involve killing people over a wide area. And occasionally I've like, actually, no, I'm hearing so many good things about this game. Her Story, I was hearing so many good things about. It's like, you know what, I'm going to have to give this a go. I was so intrigued by the idea and the concept of Florence. Like, I have to try this. And now some of these are among my favorite games. They're like among the best this industry has ever produced. And again, like something that only this industry can produce. And yeah, I'm just hoping that people who read this, like, kind of branch out a little and find something new that they like.
Yeah. I also think it's fun too with this book, because for me, it's also like if you're a person that's really into video games, but you're always struggling to recommend video games to people that don't play games, this is a great book for them too. Because you actually include some games in here that my wife has just found on her own, like Neko Atsume, the cat simulator. And now, like, she played that for months, and it was great. It's a great game. It's wonderful, and I just love that there's games in here like that for people that don't really play games that often.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what makes me laugh. Like, people say that there are people out there who say they don't play games. You play Candy Crush every day.
Mm-hmm.
You play Words with Friends. You play, those are video games. Those are video games. They're all video games. Like, and yeah, like, you don't have to be a quote unquote gamer. I won't do the air quotes again, but you don't have to be a quote unquote gamer to play video games and to enjoy video games. I'm like, yeah, I wanted to kind of include as much of a mix as possible, and then include some sort of titles that you wouldn't typically think of as video games, or typically think of for, like, the core gaming audience. I wanted to kind of find stuff that that appeals to everyone. So
definitely.
Yeah. The next category of games that kind of I want to talk about is sort of a classic non-violent category, and that's racing games. And I do have one question, because we already talked about how, like, crashing a car into another car on accident is not an inherently violent act. But how do you feel about games like Burnout, where there are modes in that game where the object is to crash into other cars?
I personally love them. Burnout Paradise is my favorite racing. Yeah, Burnout Paradise is my favorite racing game of all time, and I don't even like doing the basic races. I prefer, like, the Marked Man and the just what's the mode where, like, you have to knock as many cars off the track as possible before the race ends. Like,
I can't remember what that's called, but yeah.
Rampage? Is it Rampage?
Maybe, yeah.
Or Carnage. I feel like it's an edge.
Carnage is a good pun. That sounds
Carnage.
like
maybe with that. I used to love the crash mode in Burnout too. Like, where the idea is you crash into a junction in a way that causes the most damage possible and the biggest pileup of cars. I, as a player, enjoy those things. They're obviously they don't qualify as non-violent games. So I couldn't include them. I couldn't include Burnout in here. But yeah, I still enjoy them. They're still great games. Like, again, this is my point. Like, it's not to decry violence. Just because I've not included things like Burnout in the non-violent games book doesn't mean I would put Burnout Paradise over any of the racing games in the book I've put. But they don't count. They don't count under my criteria, so they don't go. Like, you can have both. You can enjoy violent video games and enjoy non-violent ones as well.
Definitely.
Do you have any personal favorite non-violent racing games then? I guess they would be in the book, but
yeah, personal favorite non-violent racing game would be the Forza Horizon games. I absolutely adore those. I am not into the Forza Motorsport, where it's all about, like tweaking every individual spark plug so you do really well on the track, and a really, really high detailed, graphically incredible track that you cannot stray away from. I quite like just driving around these vast landscapes and, challenging, passers-by to races on the fly and seeing what sort of places you can discover. Yeah, I really enjoy the Forza Horizon games. They're amazing.
You actually mentioned one in the book that I was really excited about because it was like childhood nostalgia, and that's Wave Race.
Yes.
Oh, Wave Race, like the moving the control stick so you could, like, do a handstand while riding the jet ski or, like, ride it backwards. Like, I will always remember that game for that, and I was just really appreciative that you have that in there.
That's cool.
Also, Trials in there, the motorcycle, because that's kind of like a puzzle game at the same time in a way. If you got to figure out, like, the right way to, like, move around the course. And I love those games so much.
Yeah, I hear amazing things. I am awful at those games, but they are amazing.
Yeah.
And you're right. Yeah, like, Trials could be seen as a puzzle game, absolutely. I did worry, like, people can be like, Trials could be a violent game because you cause your driver a lot of damage, the rider a lot of damage. Like, yeah, but not if you do it right.
Exactly. That's not the point. Is not to crash. Yeah.
It's not the point. The point is to get him from one end of the track to the other in one piece.
Exactly. So. Yeah, I think Trials belongs on that list, definitely. So the next section of game genre that I think was, like, when you talk non-violent video games, this always comes up, and that's rhythm games.
Yes.
And so you include, like, DDR, Guitar Hero, Beat Saber, but the one that I was completely forgot about that you mentioned is Rocksmith.
Yeah.
Which teaches you to play guitar. That's the point of the game.
Yeah. And you know what? I was, that one was one I was doing, because Guitar Hero and DJ Hero and DDR, like, they obviously have to go in. But I was kind of particularly determined to get in Rocksmith because I never had it, but I really enjoyed it when I went to a Ubisoft preview event for it just before it came out, and it works. It's incredible. Like they hand you a guitar, and I am awful with guitars. I can just about manage a piano, but I'm awful with guitars and any other kind of instrument. And I held this thing. I was playing the bass line to "Are You Going to Go My Way." And the way the Rocksmith works is like it's really clever. Whereas like Guitar Hero is like if you miss beats or miss notes, that's it. You're booed off the stage and you game over. You have to start again. Because this is an educational tool and they don't want to deter you. They basically slow down the number of notes you get until you are into a rhythm, and then they start slowly feeding you in some more. Ooh. And it's amazing. So I went from genuinely never having played a guitar before, and certainly not played a guitar well before, to within the course of the song. By the end of the song, I was playing along in decent time. Like, I'm not going to say I was an incredible guitarist, but I was a damn sight closer than I was before. Video games as an educational tool, I think, is an amazing idea that people need to explore. And Ubisoft are actually quite good at this because obviously they've got Rocksmith, they've got the Assassin's Creed Discovery Tour modes. Like, video games kind of immerse you in the subject you're learning in such a different way. Like, I don't think, I could have probably learned how to play guitar if I paid for lessons and so forth, and eventually I'd practice that. But actually doing it as something fun, I thought that was just a really clever concept, and I just really want to include that one in the book.
Well,
everything I know about guitar I learned from Rocksmith. I probably have 40 hours on the Steam version of that, and
nice.
And I'm also not good, but I can play a few chords, and that's pretty cool.
That's chords you couldn't play before you played.
Yes,
before you did Rocksmith, you couldn't play any chords. So yeah.
I actually played guitar as a teenager and stuff, and I was really into it, and I've kind of forgotten. And I put Rocksmith on my wish list because I was like, you know what? I forgot this existed. This whole learning tool completely existed. Did you think about? I mean, it involves death, so it's kind of hard to include those. Like, I'm thinking like your Oregon Trails or your Amazon Trails, like those kind of historical education. I would call them like 90s computer education games, like the typing games.
Yeah, I did toy with the Oregon Trail because it's such an iconic title. But I think there's enough graphic. I can't remember the specific reasons why I didn't include that one, but I think there are enough graphic descriptions of violence that actually, like, it's kind of safer to not include it. But yeah, there are. There are
the hunting mini game where you are actually directly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the hunting game where you kill things, and everyone
that probably will be.
Would kill everything, and then they couldn't carry all the meat. It was a waste. It kind of teaches you about that. It's like that's the life lesson.
That's probably why I didn't include it. If there's a hunting mini game, I probably didn't include it because of that reason. So I just was like so super enthralled that you had the like Rocksmith on there though, because that's kind of an experiment that I'm surprised didn't move forward. More like you said, like more educational games that teach you skills. I'm just impressed that Ubisoft's still going with Rocksmith. Sorry, Rocksmith is still going. I think it's Rocksmith Plus now as like a subscription service, and it's on like the modern console. I don't know if it's on PS5 or Xbox Series XS, but it's definitely on PS4 and Xbox One. They did quietly continue doing Rocksmith.
That's cool.
So yeah.
Do you want to talk about the next one, Tyler?
Our next on the list are just sim games in general, just all of the different simulation, Sim City, Euro Truck Simulator, tons of games. Those are great.
Honestly, I could have filled the book with just simulation games. Like when I was doing the Tumblr blog, I was trying to do #Simulation Sunday because there were so damn many. I was like, I can do one of these a week, and these the ones out there that are out. Like, obviously, Euro Truck Simulator 2 in particular went absolutely massive. Good for you, when it came out, because a bunch of particularly popular journalists really got into it and found it quite cathartic and so forth. So that one did well. Farming Simulator, people go nuts for. We ran on the site. We ran like a sponsored article that included a trailer. It was like a reaction trailer when they announced that John Deere tractors were coming to Farming Simulator. And I'm not convinced that YouTubers are particularly good actors. So these guys were genuinely losing their minds at the idea of having a particular brand of tractor. That's huge, Farming Simulator. But then the random ones you find, I don't know how good they are. Like they look pretty cheap and like, you know, low budget. But you've got like mining and tunnel digging simulator, chemical spillage simulator, air traffic control simulator. There are various kind of firefighter, ambulance, police simulators. Like there's so many railway simulators. There's bus simulators. Like there are basically, if you can think of a job, it's probably got particularly if it's a vehicle-based job, it's probably got a simulator game about it. There's fishing simulators out there. Like, you know, it's mad. Like the amount of time people are pouring into virtual simulations of, like, you know, of real world hobbies or real world occupations, but it gives people pleasure. My dad used to love Flight Simulator. My dad used to spend hours and hours, you know, learning how to take off properly, fly, you know, full, you know, real time, flying from London to New York. All right, he kind of put on autopilot, stepped out, and would, like, you know, make a cup of tea, mow the lawn, etc., and then come back and land nice, you know, land properly. Like, but yeah, I mean, the level of detail some simulators go into and the authenticity with which they recreate the experience, like, it's brilliant. I think, and you know, there's clearly an audience for them because they just keep coming out.
Yeah, the point of, like, we are now making games that just simulate real world jobs is so funny to me. My brother is a person that's really into ranch and farming simulators, and I just don't get it. But I'm like, hey, if you got that niche filled, that's great. Maybe he just wants to be a farmer. I don't know. Yeah. That's what he's trying to tell me. So the next, because you actually just briefly mentioned it, but I want to talk about Assassin's Creed Discovery Tour, because this is really cool and it's something I didn't know about until I read the book. Could you kind of explain that for our listeners?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I can explain you not knowing about it. Clearly, Ubisoft need to market it better.
Yeah.
So this is amazing. They started this with Assassin's Creed Origins. So Assassin's Creed Origins onwards, they changed the Assassin's Creed series to be more like The Witcher, massive open world RPG, lots of side quests, lots of collectibles. You know, you went from Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which was basically just London, to Assassin's Creed Origins, which was the entirety of ancient Egypt. They really pride themselves on authentically recreating the historical period that they're depicting. So they do tons and tons and tons of research into this. And with Origins, they decided, well, yeah, look, let's make use of this research. Let's create a non-violent mode of the game where there are no enemies, there's no missions. You go around, you explore ancient Egypt or ancient Greece in Odyssey or Viking era Britain in Valhalla at your own pace. You've got the entirety of the game world open to you. And then here and there in certain areas, there are certain tours which take you around. You know, this is what farming was like in ancient Egypt. This was their mythology. This was their religion. This was the gods they believed in. This is how they did mummification. Like, and all that stuff that they researched just to have in the background of the game, they put it front and center. It's like, this is what life was like in ancient Egypt or Greece or Viking era Britain. And it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's such a genius idea because you would never get a AAA game. Sadly, you would never get a AAA game that is just, here, come and learn about ancient Egypt. But tacking it onto or attaching it to this AAA blockbuster that is, you know, very violent, but then having this non-violent game mode, and they've made it a standalone release on PC, so you can just buy or download. I think it might even be free. Discovery Tour, Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla on PC, and it's in museums, it's used in schools. Like, here it is, and it's brilliant. I actually used it recently. My son is 7. He's learning about ancient Greece, so I downloaded Odyssey, fired up the Discovery Tour mode, and he went exploring, and he learned about, this is how a Greek house was laid out. This is what they did in each of the different rooms. Here's the Minotaur. This is was the Panis of Minos. And he found it fascinating. He found it, and he loved just like running around and exploring the world. And Yeah, okay, he's 7. He's not. I think the tour content is a little bit above him. There's a lot of kind of yes, in the 449th century BC. It's a little bit above him, but just being able to explore this world and he's here. There he is studying ancient Greece in school, and then here he is at home exploring ancient Greece. One of his homeworks was to build the Parthenon. So he went into Assassin's Creed and he looked at the Parthenon. It's all right. It's got lots of pillars, and it's such a great concept. I'd love to see more AAA firms do stuff like this. So sorry. I'd love to see more AAA firms do stuff like this, because they're the ones with the budget that could make educational games beyond your typical edutainment sort of thing. And particularly with things like Assassin's Creed, when you're putting that much effort into researching the world, yes, make use of it, make something educational out of it. I think it's just amazing.
Yeah, it really beats the Encyclopedia Britannica discs I had as a kid. You know what I mean? Like this whole idea of that you could just, like you said, your son studying ancient Greece, just boot up the world. There it is. Walk around. Like, it's amazing. It's like a living museum kind of that you can go walk through, which is great. I put this question on here because I just noticed a pattern. Is golf the best non-violent sports game?
Maybe. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of golf as a sport, but I think it's the one that shows the variety with which you can use you can do video games. I'm conscious there's a lot of golf games in the book, but that was partly intentional, because it's not just here's your straight Tiger Woods style PGA just. There are different takes on golf. There's desert golfing, there's golf with your friends, there's golf clash, there's dangerous golf. It's same sport, so many different concepts you can do. You can do one that's essentially desert golf is essentially a puzzle game, around a procedurally generated puzzle game. Golf clash is mobile game that's it's a social game. It's about playing golf against your friends and seeing who wins. Dangerous golf is a game about just smashing things, and that one may be borderline violent, but you're not damaging, you're not harming any living things, and the act of whacking a golf ball is not a violent act. But it's just here you go, here's some fun. Funnily enough, going back to our previous conversation about Burnout, that is actually made by Dangerous Golf is actually made by some of the people who made the Burnout games, and when they left Criterion, they made this golf game that was basically Crash Mode, but it's a golf game. And then you've got your straight simulation for people. You've got your family-friendly arcadey sort of simulations like Mario Golf. You can take one sport and you can do so many different things with it. Another example I'll give is football. You've obviously got your FIFAs and your PESs, eFootball, whatever Konami calls it now. It's just your straight up 11 on 11. This is football. But then you've got things like there's a game you've got Football Manager, which is all about the sport, but not actually directly taking part in it. It's about the business of the sport. You've got there's a game called Football Tactics and Glory, which is kind of like a strategy game, but football. You've got Inazuma 11, by the Professor Layton guys at Level 5. Inazuma 11 is essentially an RPG. That's a football game. It's and then you got the Mario Strikers games. There's so many, again, one sport, so many different gameplay possibilities.
Yeah, I love it. I just think about how Golf with Friends kind of took over Twitch for a bit. It had its time in the sun because everyone gets really into this silly golf game, and I love it. So I just love that it was in there.
Oh, silly golf games are the best ones.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, another one that really started to take off around that same time is the kind of switching subjects here is the Fall Guys game, right? That's pretty non-violent. I don't know if I haven't played a lot of it, but maybe there's some do you try to push people off the edge or in it? Maybe, but
no one dies though. It's it's a game show.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
really fun though.
That's one I was determined to. It's amazing. I love that game. That's one I was determined to include as well because so I remember them announcing that around E3. It's actually made by a studio called Mediatonic, which is in London, not too far from where I am. And I just remember thinking this is such a genius idea because they announced it in the midst of Fortnite. It was still really, I mean, it's still huge now, but like Fortnite had really taken off like not too long before, and there were so many battle royale games like PUBG. Like obviously PUBG was before Fortnite, but like you got PUBG, Fortnite, and then so many other pretenders trying to get into this battle royale space. And here was a battle royale game where you don't kill anyone. It is like it's a process of elimination. Like it's fun, silly assault courses or wacky mini games, and you play a giant jelly bean essentially, and it was very reminiscent of I don't know if you guys have got it over there, but there's a Japanese game show called Takeshi's Castle, and they play it over here in the UK on sometimes, and that game. That is basically Fall Guys. It's like you start off with 100 people. There's a bunch of silly like assault courses or games to do. Only a certain amount of people will get through each one, and the person who gets to the end is the winner. And it's such a genius idea. Like here's this. It's still got that rush, that Fortnite rush of being that last person in the battlefield, as it were. But you haven't fired a shot. You haven't punched anyone. You haven't there's no kill. No one has died for your victory. It's such a great game. I dip into it every now and then myself. I love the obstacle course levels. I'm glad they introduced the way to just do obstacle course ones rather than doing all the mini games. But it's just genius, and it's so bright and vibrant and happy. It's such an amazing game. And I just remember when they announced it, actually reaching out immediately to Mediatonics, like, can I please talk to you about this, because I think you are onto something amazing here. And it's done really well for them, which I'm so pleased about.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's just like you said, we have those game shows on they play them with fake dubbed English announcers, I think is how they do the Japanese game shows here.
Yeah,
where it's it's almost like a parody of it, but it's brilliant though. It's super fun to watch too. It's any of those obstacle
they're brilliant. Over here, they basically they show the Japanese, they show the full episode is in Japanese, but you have an English commentator over the top of it, and it's part of the joke is even the English commentator doesn't actually know what's going on. I remember there was one episode where someone acted like Takeshi's Castle, and the commentator just going "This is amazing." It's brilliant.
It's so good. It's so good. Okay, so we're kind of running out of time here. We've been talking a lot, which is good, which is a good thing. But I want to talk, because any opportunity to talk about Seaman we do it on this podcast.
That's true. We do. Yep.
We have to talk about Seaman. It's the weirdest game ever made. And we've covered it on the podcast before, but do you want to just quickly explain your reasoning for adding Seaman in here?
Honestly, I added it because it's so weird. It's just, there is no other game like it. And even I have to confess, I've not played Seaman. I've researched the games as thoroughly as I can, but obviously I don't have access to all the consoles. I don't have. I mean, some of the games are really old. I don't have access to those. So Seaman is one I've not played, but read reviews, read previews, watched it, watched long plays and stuff. And even now, having distilled it down to 250 words, I can't truly explain what is going on. It's weird, where you're looking after tadpoles that can become fish with a human face, the face of the game's designer, and eventually it can talk to you, and it learns and can ask you questions about it's weird. I'm sure it's all very clever smoke and mirrors. I worry. I mean, in the era of ChatGPT, a Seaman 2 would be frankly terrifying. But it's just so that's in there to just show how bizarre video games can be. You can honestly have the weirdest stuff.
Yeah, I love that you included Seaman in there, because like you said, it's just such a creepy, uncanny valley looking thing, and it's really scary.
Yeah.
Tyler, we have two questions left. Do you want to read the next one?
Yeah. So I guess mobile, there are a lot of games that are non-violent games that are mobile games, right? They seem to be the basis for some of these other games, like Ingress as well. Do you think there's something about mobile publishing that just wants games to be non-violent, maybe just as a way to open up the audience?
I think it's because smartphones and smart devices are ubiquitous. They are mainstream devices. With games consoles and gaming PCs, like, your audience is buying that specifically for video games. Certainly the consoles, but that is the primary purpose of buying a video game console, is to play video games. And just typically the video game audience wants to play certain experiences based purely on what sold well. Violent experiences sell well. People buy consoles so they can play a Call of Duty, a Fortnite, that sort of stuff. Video games on mobile, because mobiles are so ubiquitous, because mobiles are in everyone's hands. Like, it doesn't have to be a person that would naturally think, I'm going to play a video game. It's just, it's anyone, literally anyone has got a smartphone. Having game-like experiences on this, or gaming experience on this, like, naturally kind of lean towards the casual audience. Nintendo kind of proved this with the DS and the Wii. Nintendo proved with the DS and the Wii that non-gamer, or your non-typical gamers, atypical gamers, I guess, are still interested in games, things like Brain Training, Nintendogs, Professor Layton, stuff like that. The difficulty is convincing them to buy dedicated hardware for that sort of experience. Case in point, the Wii. Loads of people bought the Wii, enjoyed Wii Sports, didn't buy anything else, because that's just it's not something they would spend money on. It's not something they typically do. It's a dedicated device. You have to play in the lounge, set up and play in the lounge. Whereas phones are with us all the time. You can play on your commute, on the bus station, while you're waiting for the oven to finish. Like, while you're watching telly, you can just play whenever. It fits so nicely in with everyone's lives. And so naturally, I think that lends to a more casual experience. And we've seen that in the rise of things like, Candy Crush, Coin Master, King Royal Match, like, all the mobile games that everyone thinks, all the idle games, all like, the puzzle matching games. It naturally works. I think part of this as well is Farmville. Farmville demonstrated on Facebook that a huge social casual audience would be interested in these sort of social casual games where you are interacting with people, visiting their garden and watering their plants, that sort of thing. A lot of the concepts that were not invented by but popularized by Farmville, so things like visiting your friend's game, sending gifts, setting time, things being timed so you can only continue playing when a certain timer has gone down. A lot of that kind of transferred to the mobile space, the free-to-play space, because it's popular with that sort of audience. I think just mobile, the ubiquity of mobile, putting it in the hands of a much more social casual audience, means that mobile games lend themselves, like, inevitably, the more popular mobile games have been the ones that don't center around these fun experiences, because primarily want something casual, something social, something relaxing. And video game combat is not relaxing.
Yeah. So the final question we have, and it's kind of a hard one, I think, is we're going to make you choose. If you could pick one game from the book to recommend, do you have one that you would pick just instantly? Making you think on this one. It's a hard one. It's a hard question.
No, don't do that to me. Don't do that.
Do you want to do two?
Don't do that to
two. It's a hard one. It's a hard question.
I think I still lean towards Florence, because I think it's such a short experience. It's such an intuitive experience. There is no need for any tutorial. You instantly know what you're doing. And there's such a clear narrative there. Like, it's not, I know a lot of like kind of the mobile social casual games have a narrative eventually, but it's just kind of wrapping around, you are still matching gems, Yeah. But this has got every gameplay interaction is part of the narrative. And the narrative is so clear. It's such a kind of a universal story that anyone can relate to. I think I'd recommend Florence. I think everyone should try Florence. And it's 40 minutes of your life to see just what video games can do in terms of narrative, in terms of non-violent gameplay. I think it's amazing.
I've never played Florence, so I'm gonna now.
Yeah, I'm gonna too.
Do it.
Convince 2 people for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, James. The book is called The Best Nonviolent Video Games. It's out now. You can get it. But before we go, we always like to do a What You've Been Playing segment. So do you have any games you've been playing recently, James, you want to share with us?
Yeah, I love this because I don't usually get to talk about video games I'm playing in my line of work. Because I'm a business journalist, it's all kind of much more serious conversations. It's like, screw it. I'm still playing Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. I have been a massive Zelda fan since Ocarina of Time. This game is amazing, so amazing. I almost don't want to finish it. Like I've had the trouble is, I put this weird pressure on myself as a journalist, like, because I'm covering the games industry, I should be playing as many of the games as possible, and therefore I know what's going on in them, so so that I don't make a mistake by this game invented this, and someone go, actually, this was in that game 5 years ago. It's just a copy, that sort of thing. So usually whenever I'm playing a game, I'm like, I'm playing this, but I really need to get through it. I need to finish it because I need to get to that game, and then I need to get to that game. As soon as I'm playing Zelda, I don't care. I don't. I just want to play Zelda. I just want to play Tears of the Kingdom. I want to find every shrine. I want to find every light route in the depths. I want to complete most of the side quests. Do you know what? Fine. I'll even help that chap who keeps on, putting up signposts that fall over. I've been finding excuses. Like, even when I'm like, I'm kind of at a loss what I want to do. I really should go to the next main area. Okay, I'll go over here. Oh, more side quests, more signs, more, more distractions. Like, it's just, absolutely loving that game. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3, which I'm really enjoying. I'm not a massive fan of CRPGs. I kind of enjoy them, but the thing that annoys me about them is that you spend so much time like looking at stats and your character sheet and managing your inventory, and it's like, just tell me which sword is better, please. That's all I need. And to be fair, Baldur's Gate 3 still does this. But what I love about it is it's the dice roll mechanic. Or the dice roll presentation, I guess. So usually with things like, Neverwinter Nights, Icewind Dale, the original Baldur's Gates, based on Dungeons and Dragons, your chances of success in something is always based on a dice roll. But the dice roll is invisible. You never see it yourself. It's all kind of calculated in the background. It goes, yep, you were successful, or nope, you failed. This weirdly, like, by actually showing you the dice rolling and showing you how it's working out and like all the different parts of your character that you can, it makes you so much more informed about the decisions you make. Like, I now do a lot of persuasion attempts in Speechcraft because I know that I've got enough bonuses there versus deception or intimidation. And like the stuff I've been reading, the stuff that again, I love interactive narratives, and usually branching narratives are, you either go to the left path or you go to the right path, but eventually you will just culminate on the same one. This, like, there's so many different like choices you make in everything you do, not just like dialogue choices that spawn off like whole different storylines. I'm only at the end of Act 1 and I am absolutely loving it. So I'm really keen to dive back into that a lot more.
It's so fun. I powered through that game when it came out because I played the beta of it or the early access of it. And then I powered through it. It just gets better and better too. The best part, it just keeps going. It just gets more and more Baldur's Gate is what it's going to be. It's like hook. I love it. Anything else you've been playing?
Those are the two main ones. I did actually the other night. I started Hitman 2. I absolutely love stealth games, and I can't understand why I haven't played this one before. I'm like instantly at home. It's like, I'm going to sneak around. I'm going to, distract them by throwing something over here. I'm going to poison that cup of tea. Like, it's very kind of, it feels more like a spy game than an assassination game. And it's amazing. Funnily enough, I played that because I've been playing, this is a game I do recommend people try out. I've been playing a game called Deceive Incorporated or Deceive Inc. And I wasn't very good at it. So I thought I'll play something I can be good at because there aren't real people in it. Deceive Inc. it's an extraction style multiplayer game, but it's all about stealth and tactics. The best way to describe it, I guess, like, do you guys remember the Assassin's Creed multiplayer of like Brotherhood and Revelations and so forth?
A little bit.
Yeah, I haven't played.
Right. Is that where you would be in a group and you'd like pretend to be an NPC kind of to like?
Yes, exactly that. Yeah. So in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, there was a mode where the multiplayer mode. in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, there was a multiplayer mode where you were disguised as you were a character. You were targeted. You were told to assassinate another character, and you were put into this world populated by NPCs who are all clones of the characters at play. So you've got to work out which one is the real one and stab them. And they're all programmed to kind of twitch slightly like players do. And you can like do the usual Assassin's Creed things like sit on a bench or blend into a crowd and so forth. And it was so clever. I remember playing it at a preview event, and you really had to think and be really observant as to who to kill. The problem is when it came out in public release, as soon as you got other people in it, people just run around like idiots. Like, they just run around. They wouldn't play it properly. Like, they're not using stealth. They're just running around. So the person you're targeting is running away. So you have to chase him. So the person who's targeting you, he's chasing you, and the person who's targeting him, he's chasing them, and you basically end up with a Benny Hill chase across the rooftops, and it's stupid. Deceiving fixes this by not making it about killing each other. You're about completing objectives. So you are either a thief or a guard, and it's all very kind of 60s spy heist sort of thing. So if you're a spy, you are or a thief, you've got to disable 3 vault terminals, which opens a vault. You've got to get into the vault, steal the thing, and get back to the extraction point. If you're a guard, you've got to work out who the spies are and kill them. You are all disguised as NPCs, and you can change your disguise anytime. So you start off as just a random civilian. If you scan, there's like 3 classes of NPCs. There's 4 classes. There's the civilians. Then there's the kind of like the maids and waiters of the venue in green. There's the security guards in blue, and then like the scientists or elite bodyguards in purple. And each one has access to different areas. So if you're dressed as a civilian and you're in a staff room, you're going to raise suspicion and you're going to get shot. If you're staff and you're in a guard room, you're going to raise suspicion and you get shot. So you scan the NPC you want to copy and you become that NPC. And it's amazing. You've got to basically try and be as subtle as possible, and you've got to walk and not jump and run, and like you've got to blend in. It's absolutely amazing. I am terrible at it, but I love it. I really recommend people give it a go.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up right after this. Oh, that sounds really fun. I played that Assassin's Creed multiplayer like 1 or 2 times, and I always had a good time because we played with friends. So we all agreed, like, we're going to take this seriously and try to, like, be sneaky, you know? But yeah, I could see how it could become a Benny Hill chase pretty quick if someone online doesn't know what they're doing. All right. Well, Tyler, what have you been playing?
This last week, the biggest thing that I've been playing is Persona 5 Tactica, the new tactical RPG set in the Persona 5 world with all the Persona 5 characters. Love those characters. I've played, I haven't played Persona 5 Royal yet, but I played the original Persona 5. I played Strikers, and Tactica is great. And what I love the most about it is the Persona series is known for its narrative and like focusing on the characters and all of the other stuff that you can do besides the main game, which is the dungeon and exploring and combat stuff. In Tactica, you're basically just fed just a bunch of missions that are your standard tactical RPG missions of like go here, eliminate all the enemies, or maybe make it to the end or whatever. But there's no overworld. There's like nothing in between being fed combat puzzles like that, except for story. So it's like half visual novel storytelling stuff, and then it just throws a battle at you. And I really appreciate that because there's no wandering around going, where do I need to go next? Shoot, do I need to like balance my day here and like maybe move one of the social links forward or anything like that? None of that. It's just battle after battle with story in between. I'm really digging it. So that's the biggest thing that I've been playing.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you, Mike?
Well, I don't think we forgot to do what you've been playing on the last episode we did.
You're right.
So I did beat Return to Moria. I beat that game. I had a fun time. I liked it a lot. There's like an end game to it. I'm not going to play it. I already rolled credits. I'm like going to take a break from it for a while. I might go back to Baldur's Gate 3 actually, and James is convincing me that I need to go back. But I'm trying to go through Starfield. I'm playing that. And then also on my Miu Mini that I got, I started playing Castlevania Symphony of the Night over the Thanksgiving holiday because I wasn't at home. I took it with me, and I had so much fun. I never played the Castlevania Symphony of the Night games, and I'm all in. It's really a good time. I'm like, hey, who knew this game that everyone loves is really good? Who knew? But it's great. So that's what I've been playing. But yeah, other than that, though, thank you again, James, for being on our podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and once again, the book is called The Best Nonviolent Video Games. Don't forget that. Sorry, Tyler, I cut you off.
No, I was just saying I'm going to pick up a copy of it because it's kind of a nice thing to like sort of leave around for folks too. That they could just like find it and pick it up and go, oh yeah, and like look through it. I think that's really cool.
Anecdotally, I actually I know a couple of people who work at development studios in the UK, and they have honestly bought a copy for the studio, so it's just there, so someone will just have a look through it and maybe get some ideas. That's quite cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I love it too. Yeah, we get more people to play video games. That means more people listen to this podcast. There we go. It's a circle. We're doing it. Okay, things you can do to support our podcast. You can go to our website, codexpodcast.net. That has everything on there. Our Discord channel, our Trello boards with too many games we haven't finished, our Twitters or X's or whatever you want to call it. And then you can also send us an email from there, or you can email us directly at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. With that, though, I think that's it for the day. Tyler, do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah. Goodbye, James, and goodbye, everybody.